What's up YouTube? In this video I'm going over my top 10 tips for building automations in Make, formerly known as Integromat, so we can maybe call it Integromake. Alright, so I'm going to go over my top 10 tips. These are tips that I've learned from trial and error and experience over the past couple years of building automations with Integromat, with Make. So let's dive in. All right, now for tip number 6, which is an add-on to tip number 5. So instead of having to go and resubmit data multiple times, for example, of a form or a survey, you don't have to submit that multiple times of all these entries. What you have to do is just submit it once. And once you have that information here by this little bubble right here, so here's all our packet of information. What we'll do is we'll actually go and resubmit this data, but in a different way, not submitting the form again. The way we're going to do that is what we're going to do is we're going to create another scenario, but this one is going to be the HTTP to send information. So I'll show you how to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up another tab. I have a blank scenario here, and this is what we're going to use to send the information to that other scenario. In this one, I'm going to add a module and we're going to type in HTTP. This is sending the information to the webhook instead of receiving. So what we're going to do is going to select make a request. And so in here, for the method, we're going to choose post. And now for the URL, I'm going to come back to the other one and I'm going to open up this webhook. I'm going to copy the URL here. We're going to come back to this one, paste the URL in here, and now we're going to come down to the body type. This we're going to choose raw, we're going to do content type, JSON, and then the request content here, this is where we're going to grab the information we want to send. So we'll come back to this one, and we're going to click on the little bubble here. So now here is download the output bundles. This little icon here, download output bundles. What you're going to do is you're going to select all of it, copy it, come back over to here, and you're going to paste all the information into here. And now what we do is when I scroll down, okay, so there, click OK. And now when I run this is going to send the information, which is already the information that I gathered here. It's going to send the information to this webhook. Now I can go test this scenario multiple times. Say I don't want to create all these tasks here, but I need to check to make sure that the search sheet is working. Again, I'll unlink this. What I'll do is either I can run once or I can leave this with and gather up a queue. So say I just run once. Okay, now it's waiting for information. Come back to this one. I will run this one once. So there, the information was sent. Now we go back to the other module and you see the information came through. So if we open this again, this is going to be the same data that we just had because we resubmitted it without having to go through and resubmit the form each and every time. So now I can go and check to make sure that my search rows worked, or I can connect all these. I can make sure the whole module worked without having to go and resubmit my form 20 times as I'm testing my scenario. All right, so tip number 7 is using the built-in functions within Make. So each module, you can use the functions that Make already has. For example, one that I use a lot is the if-then statement, which is the same as in Excel, Google Sheets. By using the appropriate functions in your modules, you're going to eliminate or minimize the amount of operations you use for your entire scenario. So for example, if I come into this tools one here, this is the if-then statement. So this is saying if 1 equals 1, then output A. If not, output B. So if you know Google Sheets or Excel, you probably use this. It's probably one of the most common ones. If 1 equals 2, then output A. If not, output B. So 1 does not equal 2, outputting B. Yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to go into full details of that. But if you look here, if email equals email, spit out contact ID. If not, there's actually if-then statements within if-then statements. So can you get kind of complicated? That's why I'll show you a little simpler one. And we'll come into the Slack one here. So this also has one here, the if-then statement. We're going to choose this one right here. I'll break this up. I'm using an if-then statement in here. Other functions I'm using, which I use a lot too, is the format date, and then also the if empty. So there's just a couple of them that I'll go through. The way you get those is it's on the top here, these little tabs up here. The star one is all your previous modules, the fields that you have. You go to the little gear icon. These are a lot of the general functions you can use. If you hover the mouse over it, then you can see how the formula actually works. They give you some examples. If empty, this one is saying if this first value is empty, then use this. If not, just leave it blank. There's switch, there's omit, there's a bunch of other ones you can use. These are all your math functions. So here, if you want to sum up some numbers, if you want to round numbers, get the average, you can do that. You can also format numbers. By using a lot of these functions within a module, you're going to eliminate having to use another module to make calculations or gather information and wasting those operations. Next one here is the text and binary functions. This is also very useful. Capitalize. So if you put this, it'll make, for example here, internet, it'll make the first letter of each word capital. If you want to do upper, this will make every letter of that word or that phrase uppercase. Split, this is also a good one as well. This will split a packet of information. So John, George, Paul, separated by where do I want it to split? A comma, or you can use a space. And now this is going to break into 3 different segments. One is John, one is George, one is Paul. Next one over here is your date and time. This is where you get all your date and time functions. This is where you can format date. You can add hours. You can take away hours, minutes, years, parse the dates. A lot of different things you can do. For example, here, the format date. This one I use a lot as well. So you have format date. And then if you have this, call it ugly looking date that comes in from a module, maybe I want to format it to just show the year, month, date. Maybe I just wanted to show the month, day, year. This would be the input data. The output would be however I format it. So month, day, year. Maybe I also want the time. So then I would put in year, month, day, however format. I can rearrange it however I want. And then I put the time in here. So then you see the output would be 2016, 12/28, 4:03 p.m. And you can also do it this way. You can put in a time zone. You can have a military time. Pretty much however you want to format it, you can format the date. That's a very useful one. So as you see in here, I have the format date. This start time is going to be, the output is going to be the month, dash day, dash year, and then the time. For this if then function, which I use a lot, this one is saying if the question from the first module, the question, and it's question number 8, is titled setter, it's not really a question, but that was labeled as on the question on the Calendly, then the output I want to be not just the answer, but I actually put in a label here. So what we have here is name, output the name, email, output the email, phone, output the phone. But maybe people don't select what the setter is. So then in this case, the way it's going to look, if the question is a setter, then the output here is going to be setter, and then whatever the answer is. Say the answer was my name, we'll put Aaron. So then this is how it would look when it spits it out in the Slack message. If not, if question number 8 is either titled something different or it's just not there, then it's going to be ignore. So then it'll just be blank. There won't be a setter block down here in the Slack message. Kind of confusing, but you'll see different use cases that you can find for it. And that is tip number 7, using the functions within the modules of Make. And now tip number 8, which is also going to be combined a little bit with tip number 9 because they're very similar as well. This tip is doing a lot of your calculations and setting a lot of your data in a module in the beginning of your scenario. So for example, this one, I'm using the set multiple variables. That can be found under the tools here. And there is set variable, get variable, multiple variables. I'll show you what those mean. In this case, if I open up this set multiple variables, what I'm doing is essentially creating new packets of information that I need for my, or new fields that I need for my scenario later on down the road. So in this example, lead source. What I'm doing is I'm using an if then function within this. So what it's doing is looking up to see if question number 9, so this is pulsating, meaning the question number 9 from this module, if it equals application source. So if the 9th question asked with application source, then I want to output whatever the answer was. If not, then I'm having to take from the spreadsheet. Don't worry about that part. But essentially, question number 9, if it's application source, the output is going to be whatever the answer was. So that would be what this lead source is. Same thing with the phone number here. If this question equals phone number, then the output I want to be the answer. Here's that split function I was talking about earlier. The name. So the name, because maybe on this Calendly module, you're just asking for the full name, but you want to have it split first name and last name. What you'll do is, so I choose name here under the split, and then how do I want it split up? Well, I'm choosing space because if it's Aaron Delzensky, the space there is how I want it to separate it. Now this will bring out 2 packets of information. It'll be name 1 and name 2, and then you have those that you can use where you need them in your scenario. So this tip is by using a set multiple variable and do a lot of your calculations or setting your variables in the beginning. And now once you do that, so now if I come down the line here, we'll open this up and just to show where this is. So this pink one here, set multiple variables, or light purple. Come down here, see this is the lead source. The output is if I type that in, phone number, and then the name here is split. So that I would put the first one in. And then maybe I also want it to space. I want the first name and the last name. So then I would put this in again, but this time over here, I would put 2. And and this would be packet number 1 followed by packet number 2. But if I only wanted the first name, then I would just do this, and it's only going to take the first name that person put in for their full name. And so this is very useful by using multiple variables because I can set everything in the beginning and then I can just choose them down the line instead of having to create a bunch of formulas in a lot of my modules down the road. For example, what I could have done is I could have taken this whole thing and I could have set all of this up in the beginning in that first set multiple variables. And then from here, I would just choose that setter block here, and I wouldn't have to type formulas within this. All right, so now we're going to roll right into tip number 9, which is a follow-up to tip number 8. First, you're setting your variables here. That is, if you want to do your calculations here, set certain variables to use them down the road. But there's another way you can use the set multiple variables, and it's combined with the get multiple variables, which is in the tools here. Okay, so for this example, in this scenario, when a booked call comes in, it's going to go down to this router. And then here, there's all these different branches, different paths. So it's going to go down this first one here, but this has a filter. So it might not actually pass through this. If it doesn't, it's going to check, will it pass through this filter, through this filter? So really it's only going to go down, the way I have it set up here, only going to go down one of these branches. But since this one down here does not have a filter at all, meaning it's always going to go down this one. So it'll go down one of these first ones, and then it will go down this. The reason why I have this set up is because I always want a Slack message sent out. I always want these things to happen, but these are going to be depending on if the lead exists or if the lead does not exist. So in this first path, if the lead does not exist in close, I want it to create a lead. So it's going to create a lead, and then it's going to create the opportunity, do these other steps down here. If the lead does exist, then it's going to go down this path or one of these two paths and just update the lead. But if I want this to happen every time, I would have to copy this entire scenario or this entire branch here, copy it, and put it at the end of this one, put it at the end of this one, and put it at the end of this one, which would be pretty messy, all these modules set up. So a convenient way of getting around that is by putting at the end of your branch, set multiple variables. So in this one, if I open this, it's not a calculation or any formulas. All this is doing is I name it what I want. So we'll say lead ID, and then it's going to set the lead ID from this module here. So now the output is going to be that lead ID. Opportunity ID is going to be the opportunity ID, contact ID. So I'm setting all of these. And what you want to keep in mind is, so this needs to be labeled exactly how you want it for these branches as well. So lead ID there, essentially these three are the same. So I open this one, lead ID, opportunity ID. This one, lead ID, opportunity ID. But whatever the output is, for this is this updated lead, this lead ID, and this is the opportunity coming from this one. Okay, so now we'll clear this up. Could have been confusing there, that last little 30 seconds. But if we come down here to the get multiple variables, as I said earlier, always going to go down this branch. So how am I going to get this information, this lead ID? I'm going to use get multiple variables. In here, I'm going to type in this lead ID, which is the exact same. We got to make it the same as up here. So I'm setting the variable here, and it's saved in this scenario. And now when it comes down to this branch, it's going to pull that information, which is the lead ID here. Pull the information, which is the opportunity ID, contact ID, client ID. Since these are all labeled the same, remember it's only going to go down one path. So it's only going to be one lead ID for this one scenario run. So now it's going to pull what the lead ID is. Say it came down this one, pull that lead ID, and you have the output here. And now when we get to, we'll say the Slack message, we scroll down and we have lead ID here. So this is where it's going to take the lead ID, and it's taking it from this one here, which is pulling it from one of these three branches up top here that we used. So that's very convenient to use the get and set multiple variables without having to have this entire branch copy and paste. If I didn't use the multiple variables, it would look like this. It would look like this. And it would look like this, because I would have to have this under all of them. And if we auto align, it's going to look like this very complicated and confusing scenario, which we don't want to have. So you can eliminate all this and just have it come down one branch by using the set and get variables. And last but not least, let's get into tip number 10. So tip number 10 is using Google Sheets as a database. So what I mean by that is, as you see right here, I have this Google Sheets module pretty early in the scenario. So what this is going to do is when a book call comes in, instead of having to do formulas down the road or figure out which calendar it came from, if you have multiple calendars, you're going to use the Google Sheets as a database to look up specific information that you need. So let me show you an example. For this one, we're going to say I have 4 calendars in my Calendly set up that people can book on. And I want it to run for all of this, but each one say has different questions or has different information that I want from that calendar. Or say I only want 2 of the calendars to pass information, but the other ones I don't. All right, so it's team fields and variables. I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet right here. So as you see here, for each row, it's a different calendar. We have the URI here, which is the unique identifier. It's like the serial number for that calendar. And then we have what the event name is, then the scheduling URL, and then I have a column for what it's used for, the emoji, which is what I'm going to put in the Slack message, the emoji ID, which Slack channel I want it to go to, and the lead source. So I put this information based on the information I want from that calendar. Then what I do now is, back in my scenario, I use this team fields and variables, and what it does in here is going to search on that spreadsheet. It's going to search the URI that it gets from the booked call, the calendar. It's going to look up on the spreadsheet to find out which calendar we're using. So we're going to say the scenario runs and it's for this one-on-one call. So this serial number right here, it finds this row, and now I have all this information to use later on in my scenario. Okay, so first off, after this module, once it finds which calendar it is, now it's going to come down this filter here. We'll open up the filter here, and if this URI, so column B, we'll go back here, column B, and then we'll go back here. If column B equals to the URI from this module, if they equals, so it's the same one here, what's going to happen is it will allow it to pass. So this is how I can use it, because maybe I have, say, 6 calendars, but I only want these 4 calendars to actually run through this scenario. If I have another calendar in here and it's not here, the filter is not going to pass, and so the scenario will just stop there. Maybe it's a personal calendar. I don't need going out to my team to see all my book calls. So this, it'll just look up the URI. If it matches, then it'll move on. Where else do I use this here? In the tools here, same thing. So if question is the application source, but if not, then I'm going to have it grab pretty sure this is whatever the column lead source. So then it will actually grab that information. So in this case, it would be YouTube, which I can use then later on. Again, it's also going to be used here in the Slack message. So for the emoji, this way I only have to build this Slack channel or this Slack message once, because it's going to pull the emoji from that spreadsheet. So for example, it's going to pull this little camera icon and it's going to use that in here. And then down here, I have more filters as well. So here, if the custom activity, which is a column on that spreadsheet, equals to this 6QS, then it will pass. If not, it'll just stop. So that's how you can use Google Sheets as a database, that you can really minimize your scenarios and not having to have all these different modules in here and really get convoluted and confusing. All right, so that concludes my top 10 tips for building and optimizing your scenarios in Make, all of your automations. If you use all these properly, you can really minimize your scenarios to reduce the amount of operations you're using and also just make your scenarios work better. As you see, I've pretty much combined all 10 of my tips into this one workflow. If I didn't, and I did it a roundabout way, some other way, then this thing could be super huge and big and very confusing and not work properly. Hope that helped. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Let me know and I will do a follow-up video. I will respond back to you. I'll make sure that you understand everything that I've taught in this top 10 tips of my Make Automations video. All right, with that, have a great day and I'll see you guys in the next one.